Good afternoon. In my desire to better understand how soldiers coped with adversity during the Civil War, I selected three articles from the America History and Life with Full Text database. The first article, by Earl J. Hess, is a 2017 writing titled The Early Indicators Project, using massive data and statistical analysis to understand the life cycle of Civil War soldiers. In his article, Hess discusses the Early Indicator Project initiated by economic historian Robert Fogel in the 1980s and the subsequent studies conducted using Fogel's work. According to Hess, Fogel created the largest database on Civil War soldiers, consisting of information drawn from millions of military service records, medical records, and pension records of nearly 40,000 Union soldiers. After Fogel's death in 2013, the Early Indicators Project came under the direction of Dora L. Costa. Under Costa, data collection continued, adding 21,000 African American soldiers to the database. Hess emphasizes how scholars working in American economic and social history, economists, medical professionals, and legal scholars have produced 158 publications from Fogel's database. Hess cites 39 of those publications in his essay. Scholars have used the collected data to explore several major categories, including leadership, the experience of battle, prisoners of war, desertion, African American soldiers, health, and military pensions. Ironically, Hess notes how most Civil War historians seem unaware of the database. Therefore, Hess' purpose in the essay is to describe how the Early Indicators Project has rejuvenated the study of Civil War soldiers and to encourage Civil War historians to become part of the process. The second article that I selected is Civil War Soldiers and Dreams of War by Dylan J. Carroll. I'm not sure if Carroll used the Early Indicators database, but his essay certainly explores some of the same categories that Fogel studied. Carroll's writing analyzes the dreams of soldiers and former soldiers of the American Civil War to argue that the experiences of battle, hospital, and prison could be emotionally and psychologically damaging. According to Carroll, historians of the war's mental trauma have turned to records of insane asylums to understand the conflict's impact on fighting men. And while these records are important, they are not necessarily representative of the average Civil War veteran. Carroll points out how most soldiers never set foot in insane asylums. Thus, their recorded dreams can give historians a further understanding of how the conflict affected the average veteran. Therefore, Carroll uses Civil War letters, memoirs, diaries, and hospital journals in studying Civil War soldiers and their dreams. According to Carroll, analyzing the dreams of Civil War veterans can teach us about the emotional and psychological trauma that could afflict former soldiers and stay with them throughout their post-war lives. Not every veteran who struggled with military service went on to lead an unproductive life. Many did live healthy, productive lives, yet their experiences still haunted them. Carroll cautions historians to not always think of trauma in the dichotomous language of PTSD. Furthermore, he notes how during the war, the very idea of a traumatic memory, an experience so traumatic that it can upset one's mental health, did not yet exist. The third article I selected, titled, I Am Not So Patriotic as I Once Was, The Effects of Military Occupation on the Occupying Union Soldiers During the Civil War, further examines the effects of the Civil War on soldiers. According to author Judkin Browning, while several scholars have analyzed soldiers' motivations and what sustained their morale, particularly through harrowing combat situations, few scholars have written on how the experience of military occupation affected Union soldier morale and motivation. Browning describes how for soldiers on occupation duty there was no opportunity for glory, none of the exhilaration or anticipation of engaging in combat, and few chances to build the bonds with each other that battle experience helped forge between soldiers. Instead, they acted as police units, forced into constant contact with white Southern civilians and black slaves. They became victims of clandestine attacks and carried out federal policies of which several disapproved. This was not why they enlisted, and they voiced a decided lack of satisfaction with their duties as a result. The experience of occupation and its many disagreeable duties forced soldiers to re-examine their views on the war and the nation that they fought to serve. In the end, Browning concludes that many became far more cynical than they had been when they enlisted and less patriotic. Yet they persevered despite their disgruntlement. Thank you very much.